Well, hello and welcome everybody again. This is the third training this summer that we've done. This title of this training is Understanding Your Role as an Advocate in Student Government. So I started off with the slide here with the kind of visual images. On the left is what we kind of think of what advocates are, where it's like, yeah, they're just, advocating and speaking truth to power, in a megaphone or microphone. And I wanted to let you know that it's much more than that. And I also put this little image on the right is because, it's just a bunch of different students eating. But the reason why is I bring that image up is because one of the most powerful things that you can do as advocates is actually having meals with your constituents, having meals with different people and different individuals, different stakeholders. It's probably the most important thing that you can do, right? That could be a whole separate training about how to be more influential, but one of them is to break bread with people and really get to know and understand them. So again, to recap, it's a kind of refresh. You guys should also know me by now. Again, I'm Tim Duffy, been doing leadership training for over 18 years now. I was president of student government. I received awards for those accomplishments not because I was special, but I really followed the advice of my mentors and was able to implement that. After I graduated, I worked in government for several years that I'll be talking about some of the examples. I worked for the National Society of Leadership and Success. I was part of the executive team to help grow that organization to be the largest collegiate leadership society in the country. And some of the things in the training today, I'm going to talk about how we did that. I wore many hats, sales and account management, managed different people, different interns. I was a broadcast producer, so I got to meet and connect with some of these celebrities and best-selling authors and speakers. And so now I do trainings. I also created Elective Society as a free membership society to help create the next generation of leaders. So what are we going to learn in this training today? I'm going to boil down advocacy as 5 different levels, right? So we're going to start off with the first level, going all the way to the last being the best. So in my description of all these different levels of advocacy, I also want to instill leadership lessons for all of you, because no matter what you do here in student government, whether you guys go out to work in nonprofits, corporate, government, there's certain lessons that I want to teach you that can be applied to everything. So the skills that we're going to be learning in this training today, I'm going to even talk about some personal examples that you can apply this in your relationships with your loved ones, and you can apply it to your job. So these are universal skills that I want to impart with you today with different stories and different examples. So first level is megaphone advocacy, hearing complaints and share it to those key decision makers. Second is conscientious advocacy. So that word should be familiar to many of you because we did the training, high performance communication. And we talked about one of the greatest skills to be successful is to understand the idea of conscientiousness. And that's and in this example, we're going to say, conduct formal and informal surveys and sort and summarize and quantify and prioritize. These are the different levels of advocacy that's the next level. Beyond that is SMART goal-based advocacy, right? Some of you probably have already heard what SMART goals are. Again, I know what they are, but actually practicing and using them and being able to do them is a little bit more difficult. And people oftentimes confuse goals and action steps. So we can also address that. The next level above that is win-win advocacy. This requires research, recognizing the impact. So I can create all these goals, but what are the goals and action steps? How are they going to impact all these other stakeholders? And we're going to talk about unintended consequences. Sometimes, even in government, they pass a law and they do something thinking it's really good and then discover, wow, we didn't know it was going to have that impact. So that's something that we have to think about. And then the last is legacy advocacy. Again, as students, we're so focused on, hey, I'm elected right now. Let's do something now. But if you really want to have a legacy, if you want to create and do something that outlives you, that means that you have to start thinking long-term and work on goals, stuff that you're going to take action steps on that you will probably never see the result from that. You'll probably be graduated, but you can recognize that you're the one that started that seed. So we're going to dive deep into each one of those. So first one, megaphone advocacy. And by the way, once we complete this whole training, if you fill out the post assessment, I'm also going to provide you a summary handout of all these different principles and leadership lessons and things like that. I love it when people take notes because it helps retain in the brain and retain that information. But I just want to let you know that that's also available to you. So don't worry if you don't get everything. Okay. So first level, megaphone advocacy. This is when you hear complaints. You could see the person on the left is one of your constituents. So you could just imagine as a student, just, I hate this. I don't like this. This is a problem. And your job is to just listen, right? To actually hear those concerns. And so once you actually, as student leaders, hear all those concerns, what is your role? What is your job? Well, as an advocate, you need to go to those key decision makers. Maybe it's your SGA advisor, maybe it's the president of the school, maybe it's whomever is that key decision maker or somebody that has some power and influence over solving that problem. Well, you bring it to their attention. And so that is the first level. And sometimes people get elected and they do that. They listen to the students' complaints and they report it, and then they wash their hands. I did a good job. I advocated on behalf of the students. And I would say, great, good job. But there's a lot more to that. And to me, let's start off with the first leadership lesson. Leaders truly listen. And the greatest gift that you can give to somebody else is to actually listen to them and acknowledge their worries and concerns. Here's what happens with most people. If you are in a relationship, or if you are dealing with somebody and somebody's complaining, hey, Tim, oh my goodness, this grass is all drying up. What the hell? What's going on? Your immediate reaction is to say, well, just water the grass, right? Go ahead, just do it. But that is not what a true advocate, a true leader actually does. What they do is they not trying to have any agenda. Their job is to simply listen and say, oh, okay, I really get it. Your grass right now is drying out. Is that correct? They're like, yes, I can't believe this. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. I really see that. It's very dark and it's brown and that's probably very frustrating. Is there anything else? And then you start to figure out that there's much more. It's not just the grass. It's like, well, the neighbor has this all, light leading, sun beaming down with this glass and it's frying my, whatever. I'm just making up a silly example, but you kind of get my point. But the greatest gift that you could do is to actually listen to somebody without an agenda, without actually just listening to them. So I'm going to give you some perfect examples of how I applied this. Remember when I told you about my life story, where I basically said, I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to serve my constituents. So after I graduated, I worked in government. This is an actual picture of the town hall that I worked at. Okay, it's the town of North Hempstead, and you can't see it, but on the far right, all the way in the back, was my office. I was the legislative aide to a council person, and he was gone all day. And he was a lawyer by day, doing divorce and criminal, as a divorce, marriage and criminal defense attorney. And then he would come in at night and say, Tim, tell me what's happened all throughout the day. So guess what? I was on the phone, listening to constituents' complaints, complaining about their neighbors, complaining about the stop signs, complaining, why does it do this? And boy, did I get an earful of all the people who are miserable and angry and frustrated. I like to say that there's a certain type of people. Most people just live their busy lives and complain and just move on because they're too busy working. But a lot of people have the time and will call and complain about every little thing and every little neighbor. And so here was what was so interesting that I discovered. And this is going to help you understand as your role as advocates. I didn't always solve the people's problems, okay? And I recognized that that wasn't really what my job was. I was a therapist, okay? I was having people call in complaining about everything, and all they really wanted me to do is be the person that could allow them to vent, okay? Tell them the frustration. Listen, they have such low expectations of government's going to accomplish anything. And when I would just listen and I'd say, listen, I'm going to share it with the council person. I'm going to share it with the town supervisor. Thank you so much for, hey, listen, if you don't hear back from me, if we don't get any resolution, call me back, and guess what? they appreciated my effort, everything that I did to actually help address their concerns. And many of the times they didn't happen. They didn't get what they wanted. And here was a little side tangent that I'll tell you about government, just kind of my inside scoop that you're not going to get to hear very well. Whenever time there's a government official that says, I'm sorry, we don't have enough money to do that, or, we can't do that, that's not 100% really true. What they're really saying is we can always do anything we want. We can throw money at any problem that we want. But the real answer is that a priority? And when they say that, no, we can't do that, it just means that it's not important for them. There may be other things that are much more important. Okay. Yeah, you want that pavement walk, those potholes filled. Well, we can't do that right now. We have to wait. That just means that whoever's filling the potholes, your pothole is just not a priority. And so depending on your power and influence and your lobbying and persuasion abilities, maybe you can find ways to get that done faster. So again, just a little tidbit. And again, at any point during this whole presentation, if you guys have questions, comments, I love to raise your digital hand, just speak out loud. And I'll love to address it. Okay. I'm going to give you one more example, and then we'll go on to the next principle. And I'm going to give you an example of my relationship. So, funny story. My wife is a veterinary technician. Okay. That's why we have so many animals in our house. Okay. All rescue animals. And so she was working at a veterinary hospital. And guess what was happening? She was being worked to the bone. It was trying to turn from a normal 9 to 5 veterinary hospital to become an emergency hospital. So the owner wanted her to push my wife to stay late. So instead of coming home at 5 o'clock, she was coming home at 11 p.m. and midnight. And she was just getting burned completely out. And it was so frustrating. And so she was quite miserable. She loved her coworkers, but just couldn't stand it, and it was taking a toll. And so she would come home and she would complain to me. And I'm going to show you how this app applies for you guys as advocates. Okay. So she would come and complain and say, oh, this job, blah, blah, blah. I'm complaining about it. And guess what I did? I did the most stereotypical husband thing that you could ever do. Okay. Well, let's try to fix and solve your problem. Hey, why don't we find different animal hospitals? Why don't we search within a 5-mile radius of all the animal hospitals? Why don't you contact? So I'm trying to be solution oriented, and she'd be like, boom, 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 like karate, just blocking every single suggestion that I had. And so I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, this is frustrating. I'm trying to help. Then what happened? I took a 2-day communication course. And the communication course talked about some of these principles, these leadership principles, like the greatest gift that you could give is to actually listen to somebody. So what they did is they told me, whenever you're having a conversation with somebody and they're complaining, don't have an agenda, don't try to push anything, just simply listen and see how deep the well goes. Okay, that means you can respond by, oh, interesting, or tell me more, or, how do you feel about that? So we're driving in the car. We're coming back home, and she's complaining. Again, this has been going on for a month now, okay? Complaining about her job, the work and stuff. Oh man, that sucks. Just, oh yeah, anything else? What else is going on? And I just did that. And we've stopped in front of her house, and she's still talking, and I keep asking questions. I'm trying not to almost laugh because I keep using the same words over and over again. Is there anything else? Oh, that sucks. Tell me more. What else is going on? There's only so many synonyms you could use for continuing the conversation. So finally, I asked her, is there anything else? And she says, no, that's it. And at that moment, my brain's like, ha, Tim, now you got her. Now you can convince her to, do what you want her to do, right? Because she's all empty, she's reading well. And my higher self, my inner voice says, no, don't do it, Tim. Just let it be. And so we went upstairs, started to get ready for dinner and all this other stuff. And she said to me, she's like, Tim, do you want to know something? In the entire 10 to 15 years that we've ever been together, that was the first time in my life that I really felt like you truly listened to me. And I'm like, whoa, this stuff is powerful. So again, It's not something that a lot of people use, but this is the biggest gift. You sometimes feel helpless as student leaders and like, I can't do much. It's like, no, you have the power to give the gift of listening. And it's sometimes the only time that it matters. And it's the biggest gift that you can give to people. Does anybody have any comments, or have any of you experienced this in your school, or people complaining, or relationships? Again, you have no comments, we can keep going, but I just wanted to give the opportunity to share.
I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead, Lauren.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I liked the way that you worded that, how you were saying that just listen and like don't have an agenda, because I'm so used to like when someone's talking to me about like an issue, like I want to solve it right away, and I'm like, this is okay, this is what we're gonna do. And sometimes that's not always been the best thing, because they maybe get frustrated that I'm not like listening, or that they don't want my advice, they just want me to shut up and listen. So that's something that like I need to learn, like I need to just listen and don't give them my feedback.
100%. And Lauren, let me give you something else. This is a very, very powerful tool. This wasn't part of the presentation, but because you brought it up, I'm going to give it to you. Okay. I use this in sales and in when I was trying to like start new chapters of this, of the society and everything like that, is sometimes people complain, right? And they just need to feel heard. And the moment that you say, is there anything else? And they say no, okay, it's almost like a pimple, all the pus has been released. Sorry to use a gross example, right? But you get it, right? At that moment, they are appreciative that you acknowledged and summarized their concern, right? So this is what you're saying. Is this accurate? Yes, this is exactly how I'm feeling. At that moment, if there's nothing else that they need to share, and you are so full of ideas, okay, I give you two suggestions. One, you can ask your conscience, right, your higher self, to say, should I give some advice to them? And sometimes your gut will instinct to say, you know what, I don't think they're really going to be receptive to it. They, save your breath, right? But the second thing that you can do is this. You can say, hey, can I share with you something that I think can really help you solve this problem? What that is, it's called the bottle cap method. Okay. I've created that term. It's because if you have a bottle and you have a cap on it, and you're trying to, it's an empty bottle, right? They're like, oh, there's no water in here. Let me give you some water. People put caps on top of their own bottles, and the water will just pour, and you're just wasting your time, energy, and all the water. You can ask people for permission to remove the cap and allow the water to go in. So at this point, they're going to have to either say, hey, would you like some a suggestion that I think can actually help your problem? They're either going to say, no, I'm good. Okay, that saved you some time. Or yes, it's kind of like skeptical, like, I don't know if this is going to be a good suggestion or not, but they're still willing to hear it. Or they may say, yes, please, I'm ready. Tell me. That is when they're going to be the most receptive. Is that helpful, Lauren?
Yes, that's very helpful.
Okay, cool. Let's keep going. All right. So now this is what I want to do, just a very, very quick exercise. All right. Because it's different than knowing these principles, but I'd like to see you actually implement them. And you can implement them here in the SGA. You can implement them with your friends or your relationships with loved ones, with family members. I want you to do the listening game challenge. Okay. Here's how it works. Is there somebody in your life right now that complains a lot? Could be a friend, a family member, whatever it is. Okay, what I want you to do is do this listening game. And when they're complaining, I want you to do the following. Your agenda is you're not trying to convince them of anything. All you're doing is to listen and acknowledge and summarize their concern. And then what you have to do is you have to check in. Is that right? Did I get that accurate? Because sometimes people will say, hey, this is what I hear that you're telling me. And then they'll say, well, that's not exactly, it's this. And so you really want to do this game until you completely acknowledge their question concerns. And I want you to try that. And I want you to see what the difference is. So Again, this could be people you don't like, right? People who try to tell you what you should do all the time. Maybe it might be some parents or something like that. Maybe people with even different political points of view, right? People love to debate you. So take like 30 seconds right now, write down one or two people, okay? Who are the person that you want to do a listening game challenge with and to do it this week, okay? So just take a moment, write that down, 30 seconds, go. All right, let's keep going. So now we're ready to move beyond megaphone advocacy. Now we're going to be talking about conscientious advocacy. Okay, this is where you have to think. When I use that term conscientiousness, I mean very industrious. I mean somebody, you almost have to view it as an engineer, right? Like you can't just go based on guts or feelings or reactions on how to build a bridge. There are certain mechanical things that you need to do. You need to quantify it. You need to get an accurate picture. Otherwise, the bridge will collapse. That's how we have to view problems. So one of the things that I highly recommend, which great job, Lakeland College has already done this. They've done a formal survey to all of the SGA representatives. I believe is Jackie led it, and we talked about it with Lisa, and some of you may have experienced this, where they ask you questions. It's like, what do you think are the biggest problems facing students at Lakeland College, right? And then what do you think are some of the solutions that we can do to help address those problems? Because it's time for people to start thinking not just about problems, but the best solutions to those problems. It's very easy to point out the problem, but very, very few people give solutions. So then we're going to collect all this data, and then we're going to sort it, we're going to summarize it, and we're going to quantify it. So now here I'm going to pause and take a little tangent. Why is conscientious advocacy better than megaphone advocacy? Has any of you ever heard the term, the squeaky wheel gets the grease? Like, raise your hand if you've ever heard of that term, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Okay, right. So when we hear that, it usually means, oh, the people who complain the loudest, like a wheel that's squeaking, that means there's a problem there. Okay, boop, boop, boop. We need to put some oil in there. We need to lubricate that up so that squeakiness can go away, right? The problem needs to be solved. What's the problem with the squeaky wheel gets the grease? Again, I've heard it in politics. I heard it in my student government experience. It's all about megaphone advocacy. We got to complain. We got to take it to the boss. We got to, anywhere in work, in your relationships, whatever it might be. There is truth to it. But in this training, I want to provide you all real world experience and skills when it comes to addressing these issues and advocacy. So what is the problem with megaphone advocacy and the squeaky wheel gets the grease? Here's the problem. You're so busy focused on this squeaky wheel that you think this is the biggest problem, but it's not. Your other wheel that's not making any noise is practically falling off. Okay. And so you spend all this time trying to get on this squeaky wheel, and you're about to fall and crash and burn. This is what happens in organizations. This is what happens in student government all around the country. Students are so passionate about certain ideas or topics, and guess what? It consumes the whole academic year, and they get very little accomplished, especially the issues that are really facing students, of what students really need. And here is another point that I think is very, very important that I share with you. It's not always the squeaky wheel gets the grease, because you think about it, is we're dealing not with bike parts, we're dealing with people. Okay. Imagine your student leaders and you're complaining all the time. Poor Lisa, or poor the president, having to hear all about these complaints. Well, guess what? If you constantly complain and you're constantly that squeaky wheel, Well, guess what? Something that you didn't think about is they may just replace the whole squeaky wheel, meaning some people just stop listening to you. And this happens oftentimes that I've seen either in student governments, that because all they do is complain and don't solve solutions, and we're going to get to the other levels of advocacy, they just like say, shut up, I'm not going to listen to you, and your emails get ignored. And this goes back to everything I even started with the beginning of this presentation about relationships is, how would you feel if you're in a relationship and all your partner did was complain all the time? Okay, you wouldn't stand it. Okay, so that's how we have to look at advocacy. All right, let me know feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions about that. All right, the next is I'm going to apply conscientious advocacy in the workplace, because again, the skills that I'm teaching you are going to be applicable to everything. So I did this when I was working for the National Society of Leadership and Success. So just to kind of give you an overview, my role was to train team leaders and students how to actually start chapters at their various colleges. So you'd get a student say, hey, I want a chapter at my school. Well, guess what? You just can't just happen day overnight. You have to learn. You'll have to learn everything about NSLS, the society, and the National Society of Leadership and Success. You have to learn how to find an advisor, find an e-board, get approval from the school, all this work, right? And so we would do trainings and we would interview students who wanted to start chapters. And so my job was to start them. And I had like 2 to 4 team members that were responsible for training the students, training the trainers, right? Training the people who needed to start chapters. But guess what happened? Some students didn't start chapters. And so we kept saying, it's like, we're not going to hit our goals of growing as this, organization if we keep having these students who drop and fail and are not able to do it. So what did I do? I had to be a conscientious advocate. I had to figure out, okay, let me first do some informal surveys. So I started asking my team members, what do you think is the reason on why we don't start chapters, with different students? And so someone would say, well, you know what, Tim, I really tried working with students at these types of schools, like private institutions, and I don't think that they're really, really good for us to start chapters there. I think we should avoid private institution. Okay, that was one suggestion. And so you start hearing about all these different ideas based on people's perspectives. Now, here's the important point. Here's the mistake that a lot of leaders do. They think that just because their team members complain about it, it's true, or that it may be true to them, but there may be other factors that they may not be talking about. So again, I was doing all this kind of analysis. If I just listened to my team and what they were telling me, I would just do exactly what they say. Okay, my team members are telling me it's this. Let's do a different strategy. Let's avoid private schools and let's keep going. But in my head, I'm like, no, I have to think like an engineer. I have to be more conscientious about this. So what did I do is I went back and I looked at what are all the reasons why chapters didn't start. And so in one column, I would say, okay, what is the number one reason? Because remember, sometimes there was multiple reasons, and I'd have to look back at the data. Reason number 1, reason number 2. And I did this for over several years, looking back at all this data. And as you can imagine, it was tons of information of data. Somebody telling me, oh, well, this is the reason why this school didn't start, and this is the reason. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, it's kind of overwhelming, but this is what we need in order to make effective decisions, right? Then once I collected all that data, this is just too overwhelming. I needed to summarize it. So this is what I need to do. I needed to chunk this down into pieces of information, okay, 1 or 2 keywords to help describe what is this problem, right? And so that way I can block them and chunk them down. And then once I then was able to summarize these problems of why we didn't start chapters, I could then sort them, okay? These are all the people that said that this was the number 1 problem and this is the number 2 problem, et cetera, et cetera. And then now, once I said, wow, all the number 1 reason why students didn't start chapters was because of time. right? They would just say, I'm overcommitted, I'm burned out, I have to graduate. Like, I was able to summarize this. And so now that I'm looking at all this data of the number 1 through 5 biggest problems and quantifying them, what do you think I did? Let's tackle the biggest problem first, which is time. So what did we do? We increase the standards of when students want to start a chapter. They have to make sure that they have the time commitment. Then we had them attend a retreat to learn everything about NSLS. And guess what we did? I did a time management training, just like all of you got on the biggest challenge leaders face. And I made them all do that. And before the end of the training, I said, listen, right now, let us know if you're overcommitted now that you've done this exercise and you don't have time for this internship, this of starting a chapter at your school. Well, guess what? We don't want you. We love you, but we can't have you because we're not going to devote all this time and energy if you don't have it or with it. And so 1 or 2 students would drop out of the retreats. And guess what? Now we could really focus in and help start more chapters. And guess what the result was? So we did that. Some said, well, we had problems with communicating our value and questions and concerns with administrators. So it's like, well, let's increase the training so that they can handle that. And we tried other different methods. And we asked team members, hey, what ideas do you have to address these problems? So I gauged them in the process, and guess what the result was? Within a couple of years, we became the largest leadership society in the country because we were very effective at starting these chapters. That has to all do with this conscientious advocacy. So I'm just going to show you a very brief sample. I know that we did a Lakeland College survey, but here's a link to show you. This is a student government that we did this exact same thing, survey and results. So just so you can see what it looks like. I'm actually showing you what the wizard is behind the curtain, right? In the Wizard of Oz. So we asked them the questions, what are the problems? What are the solutions? And we had them do several of them, okay? So then what we did is I had to copy and paste all in one column. Here's all the problem 1. Here's all the solutions number 2. Then I needed to summarize each one. Okay, so students are not having the necessary funds to pay tuition. Okay, so that means tuition. So you would type in that keyword. That's the summary. That's the topic. That's we're chunking it down, right? Their solution was scholarships. And so I would do this all with the student leaders. And then at the end, we would sort it alphabetically, and then we would come to the bottom. All right, how many times did tuition appear? How many times all this? So guess what? 5 entries said, access to resources was the biggest problem. Another 5 students says that tuition was the biggest problem. 4 people said engagement was the problem. Mental health was a stipend. And guess what they did? We ended up working with those students on those issues. And so now, instead of being distracted, we became very, very focused on what we needed to do. So that's exactly what happened. So then they did a PowerPoint presentation. They presented all the different problems. Students had an opportunity to address them, and then they worked on them. And so this is what we actually did for Lakeland College. And some of you who did the survey, you might see some of your responses here, right? Guess what? 13 of you said engagement was a big problem. Others said class schedules, class cancellation. All this data has been shared with Jackie and Lisa, okay? But I just wanted to share with you, you see how you could say, you can suddenly do, hey, we should all work on volunteer opportunities. But if only one person talked about it, is that what the biggest priority is? So again, these are just things for you to all think about. We don't need to get into detail about them. So now let's go to the next level. SMART goal-based advocacy, okay? So I'm assuming that before you attended this training, raise your hand if you've heard about SMART goals before. Raise your hand. Have you heard about SMART goals? Okay, 1, 2, 3 hands up. Okay, SMART goals are just a way, sometimes when people have New Year's resolutions, they say, I want to lose weight. And guess what happens? They never lose weight. And the reason why is because their goals weren't very SMART goals. And so in order to have a very effective goals, they created this acronym. There's different words to describe them. You have to have a very specific goal. It has to be measurable, meaning you can determine whether everyone can say whether they achieved it or not. It has to be achievable because sometimes people choose such ambitious goals, but they're so difficult that it's not achievable. Another variation of that is realistic. Is your goal actually realistic? Sometimes people love pie in the sky ideas. Other acronyms have used different words to describe these different letters. I've also said attainable for achievable. That's another alternative. Realistic, rewarding. Are you going to work on this goal and it's really going to make you happy? Like, are you really excited about this? And is it going to be really rewarding to you? If not, you're just not going to have the enthusiasm and energy to want to achieve this goal. And then the last thing is timely. You need to have a deadline. When am I going to achieve this by? Because guess what? If you don't have a time frame of when the goal is going to be completed, then you're not going to complete it, right? It's just always going to be postponed and delayed, et cetera, et cetera. So all of you are student leaders in student government. So you can create whatever goal about any of those topics, but what are the things that you can do that are action steps that gets you closer to those goals? Well, there's not a lot of different things that you can do. Most student governments only have a certain amount of tools. Well, they can hold meetings with senior administrators, right, with Lisa and other people, and advocate for these issues, or meeting those stakeholders on campus. They can lobby them, try to persuade them and influence them to change, to buy, to purchase, whatever it may be. You can hold events on campus. You can hold a webinar like a Zoom meeting we're doing right now. You can have an info session, hand out information, get people to sign up. You can table, have petitions, or hand out informations, get commitments from people. You can flyer, right? Old school, I know. I'm sorry, I'm old school. Flyering works. I don't know if you have campus rules against that. But then also you have student government money. Maybe you need to purchase something or support something. These are just some of the things that you can do, and you can do it relatively quickly within the next 3 months within the academic semester to get it accomplished, okay? So once you create those SMART goals, you don't just run with them. All right, Lisa is your SGA advisor. She's there for a reason. She is to make sure that you guys don't drive off a cliff, because you guys can come up with all these just great goals, but she has a perspective working for the institution that could give you insight. Hey, maybe you should tweak this goal. Maybe this is not realistic on what you can achieve. Maybe if you advocate for this, there's going to be some blowback, and you might not understand the impact of you working on this issue on other people. Again, that's what she's there for, as a resource, okay? So you definitely want to get that feedback. And then, so this is some examples of what Lehman College did once they talked about access to resources. So some student governments would say, let's do a food pantry. Okay, that's great. But I got Lehman College to start thinking differently. Think in terms of SMART goals. How many students do you want to benefit from this food pantry? I can announce on next Friday, everybody in student government collect some cans from your home, go to the supermarket, drop it off. Boom, washed our hands. We did a food pantry event. Add that to our flyer of how great our student government is. Okay, that's nice, but it's not a really SMART goal, right? Unless you want to quantify. How many cans do you want to collect? How many students do you want to actually have benefit and use the food pantry? So we're getting you to start thinking about conscientiousness and SMART goals. So again, they basically said, hey, how to help with tuition? Let's make sure 1,000 students on campus apply for different scholarships. And they chose a specific deadline date for those actions to happen. Now, I'm going to pause right here. Lisa, can I ask you, did you guys, again, it's okay if you did you ever come up with any SMART goals with some of these ideas or issues? Because I'd love to do an example, an exercise where students just practice, not that you're going to work on them, turning these into SMART goals, just as the practice. But tell me your thoughts, whether you guys did this already, or if it's okay, or should we skip this?
Yeah, no. So we did talk about it at the end of last year with our, sort of our outgoing group, and then this group was here. But then our plan, I think, is to sort of regroup and do it again once we have our full team for academic year 24. So I mean, I think an exercise would be great, because I do think we'll probably be doing it again soon.
Okay, good. So right now, does anybody recognize if they did the survey, you know, several months ago and they did this and they see some of the responses? Raise your hand if you actually see one of your responses that you submitted. Is there anybody here that, okay, who's back there on the raise their hand?
Mine was definitely engagement.
Oh, for engagement. Okay, perfect. So now let's just say engagement is an important issue. So we define engagement as having students involved. So what would be, using the SMART goal, what would be a SMART goal with respect to engagement?
If you were doing some kind of like an activity or fundraiser or something that involved more of the school, you could make a goal for how many people you're hoping that would come and be involved.
Yes. So for example, if you were to make a SMART goal with engagement, what would that SMART goal be? I would like to do X, Y, Z by Z. What would that look like? And you know what? I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask everybody to be put on the spot. I want you to take about 1 minute, write down with respect to just engagement, how would you turn engagement into a SMART goal? Okay, it's something specific, it's something measurable, realistic, and it has a definite endpoint in time. So I'm going to put the timer on. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. Come up with a SMART goal with engagement. Okay, do that now. Go.
While they're doing that, I have something that I can share real quick. And then just FYI, I just have to step out just for a moment and then I'll be right back. I just have an errand here on campus I got to run before, like around 4. But this group wasn't here, but about 1.5 years ago, the group that was here, so like would have been, I guess, 2 academic years ago now. But anyway, they had a goal to reach more students in more of our locations. And so they wanted to have a regular, well, like a one-time per semester event at our West building, which is just, you know, physically a little bit farther away on our little campus than our main building is. And so so they made that goal. And since that time, we have one student activity board event at the West building per semester where we actually go there and do like kind of like a grab and go handout type thing. So that was, yeah.
Perfect example of a SMART goal, right? And I'll just summarize it, right? We, as the student government, are going to increase engagement by having one major event by the end of each semester. So there's a specific date at the end of the semester, right? It is whatever, December 31st. Now, that's one event. You either had the event or you didn't, right? You either achieved it by December 31st or did it. Now, you may add to that by actually saying how many people you might want to attend that event. That could be even more specific, more measurable. That would be a goal that, you know, you could pick a number. So who here would like to share what they wrote down as a SMART goal? It might be a similar variation of what Lisa just shared. And thanks, Lisa, for letting me know that you'll be stepping out. I'm just glad that you're not sick of my voice yet. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
All right. Who'd like to be brave enough and volunteer and share what they wrote down as a SMART goal for engagement?
Start on that. Yes, I have. We can get 100 students to engage in the Wednesday activities that we do before winter break by making the activities a little more memorable and a little more exciting for said students that aren't involved.
Okay, got it. All right, so let's perfect. First of all, thank you for sharing that, and I'm going to recap it for you, right, to make sure that I got it right. Practicing my listening skills. So before the end of the winter break, right, on Wednesdays is when you have your major events. You want to at least have minimum, but much more, one event that you have over 100 people attend. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Now, I'm going to ask you, is that very specific? Yes. Is it measurable? Yes. Now, is it achievable and realistic? What is the last time, how many people attended the last event on a Wednesday? What's the most amount of people you've seen, and when was that?
Carnival.
Yeah, the carnival, and that was close to 100, if not more.
I think we typically, I think we gave out like 300 goodie bags that day. So, yeah. So
So here,
yes, that would be, 100 would be doable. You're saying 100 in one event or like over the course of multiple events?
In one.
In one, yeah.
yeah, so based on what you're sharing right now, okay, I would say that you can exceed that number, okay? I would say that your goal should be to have 325 people or 350 people. You could say minimum 300 that we want to do that, but 350 would be the max or something like that, or your stretch goal. Now, there was one thing that you shared, which is not very measurable, right? Which is very hard to pin down. You said, I want it exciting. I want it memorable. That's very subjective, okay? So how do we know whether it's exciting or measurable? So again, I'm going to give you guys answers for the sake of time, but as you know, at the end of this training, I'm going to do a survey. I'm going to ask you, how did you like this event on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being poor, 10 being excellent? I'm a huge fan of doing surveys at your events. And you don't have, if there's 300 people, remember, all you need is a sample. You can get 20, 30, 50 people out of the whole event to fill out the survey at the end, etc., or do an email to those, if you collect the names and stuff of people who attended, what did they score the event as on a scale of 1 to 10? So maybe the goal is, in terms of exciting level, how much fun did you have, right, from 1 to 10 on fun? And so maybe the goal is, if you've never done this before, start off with a low, easy goal. People tend to be very flattering, so I would say, hey, try 8 and above, right? That might be really good, or 7 and above of having a really fun event. And then once you have that baseline, you can say, hey, next year we want to do a 9.1 or 9.2 or, whatever that may be. Is that helpful? Okay, excellent.
When trying to come up with a memorable event, maybe we could do something like the survey idea, but we can ask other students like what they would want to see and what they would be interested in, like having us bring to them, and maybe that way we can get something that they would think is memorable.
Cool. I like that. Now, remember, I'm going to give you my perspective throughout my whole student government experience, helping to train student leaders. Sometimes student advocates get sucked in with surveys, okay? They can spend a whole month trying to get, all these different ideas and stuff like that. Remember, you don't want to spend all your time just collecting data. You should have a balance between informal surveys and some formal surveys, and just understand that you're not going to get everybody's input. So for me, if I was in your shoes and I wanted to get quick turnaround time, because time is very important, right? It's the one essential thing that you can't get more of. I might just, let me have some informal conversations with people in clubs and organizations, and let me send out maybe a survey as a question. And I would add this question: what is the coolest event that you've ever been to? Why was it so amazing? And you can just, people will love to share about the coolest events that they have, right? And so you can have and it could be at school or outside of school. So then now you can have a whole bunch of different ideas, and you can get really excited about them and say, ooh, that was really interesting. And who knows, it might be, let's have an outside, silent disco where people have headphones and start dancing, but there's no music, it's all in the headphones. Or, let's have a art contest out in the field or something like that for some kind of charity. That was really cool. And they saw the kids, or whatever, a check was donated because, and you saw the kids react and feel so appreciative of that donation that was made. I'm just making things up, but do you see what I'm saying is like, oh, those are great ideas. That's what made people really excited. So you can have memorable events. I always try to do this, try to make it sexy, cool, and fun. If you're having fun doing it, if it's cool, if it's interesting, I try to tie things to movies, the media, whatever it is, anything like that, that can make it kind of fun, right? So it's like, Right now, the movie Barbie just came out. So how can you actually incorporate the theme of Barbie or whatever it may be? Do you get what I'm saying? Is those are the kind of ideas that might be able to help you. So I'm just kind of setting some seeds. All right, let's keep going. All right, so we got feedback from the advisors. We talked about that. All right, it's now time for level 4 advocacy. Okay, so this is a clip from one of my favorite old movies. It's called Predator. Okay, they've made a lot of different sequels to this movie, and that's Arnold Schwarzenegger and this other guy, giving a handshake, right? Level 4 advocacy is win-win advocacy. Okay, and here's what that means. It means that you have to do a lot more research. Okay, in terms of recognizing the impact of these problems that you've identified on all the different parties and stakeholders, and the solutions that you're suggesting. How does that impact all the different parties? Because like I said, you can have this great idea. Oh my goodness, let's do this. And then you implement it and you just, oh my goodness, this had a disastrous result. We didn't even think about this. And so I showed this picture like, let's do this, let's go have a seesaw. And then suddenly you're like, oh, this sounds like a great idea. And this poor girl was matched up with somebody that's much bigger than him or than her. And boom, she fell. So it didn't turn out to be a very fun event at all. So this is what I really mean. And I'm going to give you some examples of how to demonstrate this. So I was in student government, and we tried to identify what of the different problems facing our students. And one of the big things that we got feedback on from a lot of the other student leaders, again, because most of the people that I dealt with and talked about were clubs and organizations, presidents, vice presidents, secretary, treasurers, and they just complained and complained. Our food service sucks, like we're a multicultural club and we have to go to ask permission from the food service in order to get outside food. And then they try to make food that was like Indian food and it tasted terrible, and they're never on time, and all these different complaints. Food service sucks, food service sucks. So what I did is I'm like, okay, this is a big problem. So I started to research it. I started to develop relationship with the head of the food service. I said, okay, tell me how we can improve. Maybe we can get some new fast food restaurants, some chains. And it was a long process. And I started to realize that the food service that we had was not a very good food service. They weren't keeping up with accounting. They once I just did a deep dive into everything, they were just not being very responsible and accountable. And I found out it was just this one guy who used to own one restaurant and took on more than he could chew, and said, like, why don't I just do an agreement with the school and provide all the food service? If I can do one shop, I can do all these different shops. And he did it, and he ran it like a mom and pop, and was not very efficient and caused a lot of different problems. And so what did we end up doing? We ended up getting a committee together to re-examine our food service. All right, I'm condensing a long story. We said we're going to get a new food service here, and we even hired an outside consultant to help us prepare a RFP. That stands for a request for proposal. We're going to say, hey, all food service vendors out here, we need a new food service for a company. So guess what we did as a committee? We started saying, what is our wish list? Oh, well, when they come here, it's going to be a big corporation, and we're going to ask them for money so that they can renovate all this food service. Oh, we are going to want chains of different food service and big names. Oh yeah, what else do we want? Yeah, we're sick and tired of having eating their food. We don't want them to have exclusive right to provide all of our food service for events. We want to be able to go outside and get some somewhere else. So we're not going to put that in the contract or the request for proposal. So it was just a bunch of wish list of all the things that we did. And we had all the great minds of all the different people. We thought we were so smart. We thought we were so cool. We were so excited, you know. And even though the consultant tried to warn us, hey, you guys want to start thinking about the company, whether, you know, you're creating this wish list of what they want, you're going to want to make it attractive so they might be interested in what you guys have to offer, right? We're like, yeah, but these are our problems, and I need to address the constituents, and this is what they're requesting, and this is what they need, and this is what they want. So let's get it done. Boom, boom, boom. We send out the request for proposals. Do you want to know how many people, food companies, applied for our RFP? 0. What took us 1, 2, 3, months to put together, nobody wanted it. Not Marriott, one of the biggest food service vendors. They just said, pass. We don't care about that. We're not going to make money there. And so we had to re-examine everything. So again, this is what I mean by just because you have ideas, just think that you have solutions doesn't necessarily mean we weren't stepping outside of our perspective and thinking about the food company's perspective of what they would want. You know, maybe they don't want to spend thousands of dollars. Maybe they want an exclusive right to make sure that we try to get their food so that they don't lose money to go places outside. So again, here's another important leadership lesson from this level of advocacy. Leaders practice humility, okay? You need to research what other stakeholders' opinions are and perspectives and keep an open mind, because guess what? You could be wrong. And that's a very important part of humility, is like, just because I have an idea doesn't mean it's the best idea. Just because I have my perspective doesn't mean it's the accurate. We wanted other little tidbit that was very humbling. When I was student government president and learned about this whole food service, I kept saying, this is such a big problem, the food service. How could this owner of this food service company, piss off all these clubs and organizations that are so unhappy with this food service? I'm like, don't we give them so much money for all our food and pizzas and everything that we buy for them? Once I looked at the actual numbers of how much clubs and organizations use our food service vendor for food service, guess how much of a budget, how much revenue they made from clubs and organizations? It was approximately 10%. That means all the revenue they were making from food service did not come from clubs and organizations. Foot in my mouth. I'm walking around like, hey, we're student government. We buy all this food service. The biggest supplier and customer for the food service was the president of the college, was all the senior administrators. From whenever they had big events or big fundraisers and bought big meals and stuff, it's like, that was his primary customer. He needed to make sure that the president was happy, not us. So again, humbling, thinking that we were the most important customers. No, I was very self-focused. And so again, that's the whole idea, that had I known this information, I need to know, now that I know that, maybe I need to get the president involved. Maybe they're important stakeholder in helping to replace the food service. Again, these are things that you have to stop being so self-focused and practice humility, and know that you need to incorporate other perspectives. You could be wrong, and seek first to understand, then be understood. It's just a great principle to apply for. I'm going to give you another example, okay? Story time with Tim. A lot of you right now at Lakeland College have a free hour. I believe it's at Wednesday. Can someone correct me? How many hours is it on Wednesday?
It's 11 to 1.
Okay, 11 to 12, 12 to 1, 2 hours, okay? So it's one day out of the week. So at my school, this is Queens College City University of New York, we only had 50 minutes on a Monday and a Wednesday. It was awful, to say the least. By the time we had an event and we basically said, okay, we'll do free food, or some people went to the cafeteria, buy their food and went to our event, it's already half an hour late, and oh my goodness, they only can be there for 20 minutes and they have to go to class. It was awful. So it's like, why did we have such little free hours? Well, funny story, the biggest building on campus was called Powdermaker Hall. and it needed to be closed down for renovation. And once they closed it down, they had to change their whole schedule because they had to fit as many classes as possible all throughout the different days, spread out so that people could attend classes, because there was a limited space on how many classes they could have. So that's what they created the schedule. But by the time I had become president, the Powder Maker Hall was renovated, the building was opening up. Now is our time to get back to our old schedule. So guess what it was? We had on Mondays and Wednesdays, we had 3 hours, okay, of no block time, free hours of events. And so we came in, we're like, we need to go back to these old days of these olden times of where now that Powder Maker Hall is. So what did we do? All right. I can't just go in, barge into the president and say, hey, Mr. President, or whoever the stakeholders are, we need more free hours. We need to be able to put on events, and this is what it was before. And so do it, make it happen. No, 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 no. I have to think win-win. All right. I need to do my research. So the first person I was going to tackle in persuading and lobbying was the president of Queens College. Okay. This was a image of the school website at the time. And so something that I didn't know is many times the president of the school will give speeches, and those speeches are available online of what's important to the president and what are the priorities of the university or college. And so guess what I started to do? I started reading them. Let me read all these speeches. What does this president really care about? Okay. And he kept saying the same thing over and over again. His focus was retention. I want students to keep coming back to the school and not dropping out. And so his way of doing that was, we're going to renovate the campus. We're going to have more benches so students can eat on campus. They can hang out on campus. They can feel connected to the campus and really create a sense of community, and that they'll feel like they'll want to stay and that they'll enjoy. And it's like a recreational, almost like a mall, right? Like just hang out right here. Don't need to go back home. So I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. So I wrote out my whole pitch, my elevator pitch, what I was going to meet with the president, and I was going along with my vice president. So we scheduled a meeting, and we're having introductions and everything like that. And then he asked me, so Tim, how can I help support you? You know, what are you working on? And I said, Mr. President, this is what we want to care about. And guess what I did? I used his exact words. I think we need to increase retention on this campus. I think that we need to expand the free hour so that we have more time for students to grab food, to sit down on benches, to hang out and feel a sense of community on the campus. And if we have time to do that, they can attend events, they can study, and they can really feel connected to this campus and this community. And guess what he said? He's like, Tim, you stole the words right out of my mouth. And I'm like, uh-oh, I got caught, plagiarism. I thought he was going to be mad. I'm like, did I do something wrong? No, he was just so happy that we were on the same page on a win-win strategy. Guess what he did? I found out from the president that there was a committee, unbeknownst to student government, that was having discussions now that Powder Maker Hall was open, what the schedules were going to be like. And he said, Tim, I want you to sit on that committee with the vice president and help make that happen. Sure. So we had 10 meetings, and we went to every single meeting, and we came in there advocating, hey, 3 hours, this is what we used to have for free hours. We were trying to be reasonable, because 3 hours may seem like a long time, but let's just get back to 2 hours on Mondays and Wednesdays. Like, let's do this because we need it. And so we were just there listening, advocating. And there's all these different stakeholders at this meeting, right? One of them was these teachers, right? And these teachers were graduate students who would basically teach during the day at school, maybe these professors, and get their graduate's degree. They were adjunct faculty. They were getting master's degrees, PhD degrees. So what they did is they were complaining in the meeting, hey, you can't have classes at these certain times because we need to leave, right? We need to be able to leave the campus by 5:15 so we can do our night and evening classes. So that's what they were advocating. So it was like, I would say the 8th or 10th meeting, and we're sitting there and something happened. And I'm going to share with you all this. And this is going to be leading to the next leadership principle. You have to know when you need to compromise and when you need to hold the line. And so what I did is, the lady that was there says, no, I guess we're going to have to cut back the free hour back to 15 minutes because we need to leave early. And at that point, I got the attention of the room. I said, excuse me, we have been advocating for 2-hour event, and we've compromised and we've compromised, and we cannot, it's unacceptable for us to go back to the 15-minute free hour. We will not be able to engage students, have them feel connected on the campus, and study and be able to attend events with 50 minutes. It cannot be done. We have to change this. And it went silent, right? And I didn't say a word. And guess what happened? I stayed quiet. That lady who was complaining stayed quiet. Like, it was a very intense moment, right? You know, because I was really drawing the line. And the assistant provost at that meeting said, you know what, everybody, let's take a break. Let me work and work on this schedule. I'll come back. I'll see if I can tweak it to make sure that we address the teachers, and we'll also try to address the free hour so that we can expand it. And guess what happened? Next meeting, we came up, boom, he had a proposal. He was able to do the calendar and turn it from 50 minutes to 75 minutes so that all these classes would have 75-minute blocks. And I said, listen, this is more than what we had before. This is good. I give it my approval. And guess what happened? After a couple meetings, that was the finalized schedule. So again, the reason why I share that story with you is because here's the last leadership lesson. Leaders have to know when to compromise and when to draw the line. So you can always advocate for a big vision and a big goal, but sometimes there's so many different stakeholders that you may have to compromise. But the problem is there's always going to be people who are disagreeable, who say, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to accept it. And this requires courage and knowing, hey, being agreeable can have a lot of benefits. People will like you, they'll want to work with you, but there has to be a time that you have to know when is that time that you have to draw that line. When is that time that you need to be very disagreeable? And I drew that line, and thank goodness, if I didn't, we would have lost our free hour. And so we expanded to 75 minutes, okay? So does anybody have any questions about that? Any other comments? Feel free to raise your hand. All good? All right. Last level. Y'all ready for it? Okay, here we go. Let's create long-term action steps, okay? Through taking action. And when you do legacy advocacy, you are not going to see the immediate results. So this has to do with when you plant a tree, right? And it grows, it doesn't start bringing you apple fruit right away. It's going to take years before you see those apples. But guess what? If you constantly don't plant those seeds, you're never going to enjoy that fruit. And then if you do something that's so big and so long term, and you're thinking strategically, well, wow, that fruit tree can supply you fruit for a very, very long time. So this takes a different level of advocacy to solve bigger problems than just looking at them at the short term. So I'll go back to this example of the SGA and the food service. Guess what we did that made the difference? Even though I did all that preparatory work, built the relationship with the food service vendor, I knew that if we were going to actually have to change the food service, we had to have final say over who we could choose as a food service vendor. So once I found out that the food service company was not keeping their accounting books correctly, and I found all these different problems, I was able to lobby and persuade for us to create a new committee to help improve our food service. And guess what I did? I stacked it to make sure that students had a majority vote on that committee and all the important stakeholders so that we had some power and influence. And guess what happened in that committee? Even though during my tenure, I graduated. I did not get to see a new food service. Remember, because we didn't get any contracts because nobody wanted it. So they had to continue that food service vendor. But that set the seed that 2 years later, okay, after I had created that committee created a new request for proposal, got new proposals, and they ended up getting a new food service. That is an example of thinking as a long-term, advocacy. And I'll give you other examples. I have mentors who, when I talked about in student government, I had a lot of mentors that trained me. Mentors also did things to like put student representations, giving them power on different seats. I remember lobbying. It's not oftentimes that student government will actually lobby the state or local governments, like like I live in New York, so it was the New York legislator, to ask them for money, for funding. And guess what they did? Those leaders requested funding for a student union. So do you see how if I was back then in the 1970s and there was no place for students to hang out, that's a long-term proposal of trying to lobby to request, $1 million, however it costs to build a student union. But that takes lobbying and persuasion, and I won't get to see and benefit from the creation of that student union. But these are the type of things that long-term SGAs can work on, right? And come up with those goals. If you really want to make a legacy, brainstorm. What can you do to really solve this problem? And then share that with your advisor. So let's summarize. Okay, what have we talked about so far? We've talked about the 5 different levels of advocacy. Megaphone advocacy, just hear complaints and share it to those people who are key decision makers. Conscientious advocacy is both formal and informal surveys so that we can SSQ, sort or summarize, sort, and quantify so that we can prioritize out of all these different problems. Let's focus on the most important ones, not just the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Then we talked about creating smart goal-based advocacy, right? Once you've identified those problems and come up with solutions, create some short-term goals to be able to adjust those problems. Then the next level is win-win advocacy. So I have to put myself as, hey, if I'm going to do an engagement event, right, and I want 100 people to attend that event and that they're going to find it fun and interesting, well, guess what? I have to think about all the people on my campus. I can't just think about students. Is it going to be a fun event that faculty are going to enjoy? Okay. Is it going to be an event that students with disabilities, who have wheelchairs or anything like that, like, are they going to have an agenda and fun time? Because guess what? You could have said, I'm going to get bouncy castles and all this other stuff, but it's like, oh, I have to think about all these different stakeholders, and you have to brainstorm and do research and figure out what kind of people things would like. Maybe graduate students might not be as interested in some fun activities than undergrad students. So again, this requires you doing a lot of research and stepping outside yourself and being humble enough to address all stakeholders. And what would they think of these different events? Hey, I think a fun event would be having animals in the quad, and we all get to pet them, right? If you love animals. But it's like, well, I have to think about that solution. Live animals, insurance, I bet Lisa would have much to say about having live animals on campus, So this is the win-win advocacy that you guys are starting to be trained to think about, like, wow, it's not just me and my self-centered world. Like, I have to keep and think about all these different people. And then the last thing is, don't think short-term, think long-term, right? You guys are going to have engagement issues every year, but why don't you work on these long-term issues that can really make a positive difference, that can really make a dent? There's a term that I learned from one of my mentors whenever I had an idea. Remember in the biggest challenge leaders face training, I always said that businesses think about ideas in 3 things. Is it an immediate business need? Is it a significant business enhancement? And is it a nice to have, right? So think about that, right? If you're going to do something, is it going to be a needle mover, right? Is it really going to, if you're going to have this event and you want to do it 350 or 400, well, what's going to really draw people to that big event? Is it going to be a celebrity? Is it going to be a concert? Like, wow, that might bring a lot of people, maybe even bring people from the community, and maybe they would like that event and they love it so much. So again, I'm starting to set little seed for all of you. And again, sorry, creating more work and headaches for Lisa. Like, what? You guys want to bring a celebrity speaker now? That costs a lot of money, But again,
Okay.
brainstorm. You guys are capable of so many amazing different things. Okay. And then the last thing is, what are the leadership lessons from this? Leaders truly listen. The greatest gift you can give someone is to actually listen to them, acknowledge their worries and concerns. Practice humility. Okay. You have to research all the stakeholders' opinions and perspectives. And guess what? It's okay that your perspective can change. That's a sign of a good leader, somebody who keeps their mind open and just doesn't become so focused that they ignore other perspectives and beliefs. And the last thing is, know when to compromise and when to draw the line. Okay. There's sometimes you need to compromise and work together. Other times, you have to flex that muscle to say, no, I care so much about the students that this has to be done. This needs to be done. And I won't stop until this gets done. Okay. But you have to figure out what that line is for you. And for me, the only way that I do it is have great mentors, people like Lisa, other people. Hey, you guys even have me. If you need to have ideas that you need to bounce off of, I'm here, I'm available. You have my contact information, you have my website, everything's there. If you need those ideas and support. And lastly, listen to your consciousness, listen to your higher self. Should I really draw a line on this? Or should I compromise? If it's coming from your ego and fame and popularity, it's not coming from a good place. But if it's coming from a constructive place, it's coming from a higher place, well, then guess what? You're going to have the confidence to stand the line and be disagreeable. Okay. So just to let you guys all know, I'm going to be coming to your school on October 3rd. Lisa, I bought the tickets, so I'm thinking we should coordinate that time. We'll schedule a time early next week. We're going to do training just for you guys in person about recruiting, transitioning, and mentoring the next level of SGA members, because even though you're going to have all this new crop of new student leaders, you need to start thinking about long-term now, right? Legacy, right? What are we going to do to recruit so that we have so many different people that we're not going to run into the next year and have to try to fill in positions every time, right? Now, I have shared with Lisa and some others, I have ideas for other trainings. There's been some interest, but we want to collect your feedback. If you really love these trainings and want more, well, there are 5 different trainings that I'm going to suggest that I would love your feedback on. And this is going to be part of the post-assessment survey. The first one is engagement skills. If you want to develop your engagement skills, I have a training on secrets to building active and engaged members. So this will help you increase retention of your members, how to keep them motivated and engaged, meaning you guys, how to keep yourselves motivated and engaged, and discover why people leave organizations based on surveys and data and things like that, and how you can prevent it. The next one is just all about event planning. Now, I know we're going back to a period of time where, hey, we want more students to be on campus to attend events live. Well, that means we're going to use a lot more grassroots efforts to really get people to come to events. Right? I'm going to show why students don't show up to your events, how to get these apathetic students to come. And I'm going to give you a whole bunch of 40 different creative ways to get people to come to events. And guess what? You get to pick and choose of whatever you like so that, it will be beneficial. I'll have a whole little packet to give you and everything like that with all these different ideas. And we'll go over some of them and share some success stories of how they really work. The third one is, again, management skills. Whether you're in student government, whether you're an executive position, whether you're on committee, you're going to have to know how to manage and delegate tasks to people and how to hold people accountable. Because guess what? People fail. People say they're going to do something, as we talked about integrity in the last training, but they don't follow through. But sometimes you as student leaders, it's like, I get so frustrated. Why don't they just do what they said that they were going to do? Well, guess what? If you already know that people can be flaky, well, then guess what? There are things that you can do to help prevent, to make sure that the job gets done without less stress and less for you saying, I have to do everything myself because no one else will do it, or that I'm the only way it can be done correctly. No. If that was the case, CEOs would have to run the entire company. They have to depend on people. So I will share different stories and examples and do some mock practice on how to delegate, how to hold people accountable, and how to fire people, right? Maybe again, it's people in student government and clubs and organization, they say, they didn't do what I would do, impeach them. No. There's a lot of steps that you have to do to hold someone accountable before you jump to impeach them. And I'll show you those ways, and it's done with empathy, compassion, as well as constructive conflict, because again, they're probably not performing to their best of their ability. If you guys need some support about meetings, how to have effective meetings, even Robert's rules made simple. I think people like to really complicate Robert's rules. I think there's only certain ways that you need to know, and I give you the bare bone stuffs that will set you up for success. You don't need any other training on Robert's rules if you get just this down, okay? And then lastly, persuasion, okay? Everything that you need to do, from meetings, persuading members, persuading key stakeholders. There are different methods on lobbying, advocacy, persuading key decision makers. So I'm going to show you those methods. We covered a little bit of them here, but there's much more that we can talk about. So I'll take any questions right now. Thank you guys so much for this training. If you fill out this form today, I will basically email you actually, I will email it to you tomorrow morning. So if everybody can collect all this different feedback, I'm going to send the recording so Lisa can have it and send it out to all of you who weren't able to attend it live. You'll get this summary handout of everything that we just covered in this training. Okay, so you'll get that. I'll email that to you. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I look forward to your questions. Even if you don't have any questions, tell me some comments. Tell me what you've got out of this training so far. What stood out for you? Who would like to share?
Yeah, I just have a comment on your point of like long-term over short-term goals. I think that's really important to remember, especially like here at Lakeland, like we only have 2 years here. So most of the things that we do implement and most of the ideas that we will talk about, we won't see in our time as students. And so I think that's really important to remember.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Who said that?
Madeline?
Thank you, Madeline. Great point. Thank you. Anybody else? Questions, comments, insights? What you took away from the training?
I'll just say, I think that overall, I like that it's very tangible ideas, I think, for this group. I think one problem I run into as an advisor is, super like big, broad, sweeping ideas, which, I mean, we do have a little bit of that here and there, but I do think this has really been good as far as it seems like it's helping this group get up and running quicker with like things that, I mean, the SMART goals, I guess, is what, just going back to that example of the more outreach and engagement at the different locations on campus. I think that started with, an idea to have like multiple events throughout the year and everything. And I had to kind of direct them down to something a little bit more feasible, but we landed at a good spot. And so, yeah, I just thought it was good that this seemed to be very tangible ideas.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate your comments. Yeah, it's demoralizing when you set such an ambitious goal and then you don't hit it, okay? You want to build the momentum of what have we done in the past so that we can predictably do it justice and feel proud of our accomplishment, and then do incremental improvements. And so that's something that you should be proud of. So I love that. All right, I just posted the link again in the chat for the post assessment. I look forward to reading all of your feedback. Thank you so much. I hope to, give your comments on if there's any interest in any of those trainings. I'm going to schedule up a meeting with Lisa early next week, and we'll discuss them and the best way to help support you guys. I really want you guys to have an excellent year, and I hope that some of these trainings and the future trainings are really going to help you do that. All right. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great week.
Thank you. Have a great week as well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.